How do you know you're fluent in English? Good question. And there's not one answer, but there is one thing that if you can do means there's a good chance you're fluent, or at least you speak English very well. What is that one thing? Well, that is dreaming. If you have dreams where you speak English, where you listen to English, where you read English, if English is somehow involved in your dreams, that is a good sign that you're very familiar with the language and you can speak English very well when you're awake. I'm going to talk to you about this in today's video, and I'm also going to give you a strategy that you can implement to start dreaming in English. Because a lot of students tell me that the moment they started to dream in English was the moment they truly felt they understood the language. And it's true, because if you can dream in a language, it means that language is part of your life. Dreams are a reflection of our daily lives. We dream about what happens to us on a daily basis, and language is obviously related to that. So if you dream in English, your English is probably pretty good. Now, what does it mean to dream in a language? When I say dreaming in English, I mean three things. You can speak English naturally in the dream. For example, maybe you're talking to somebody in English. You can speak English naturally with that person. People talk to you in English in your dreams. Maybe somebody says something to you, you're in a conversation with somebody, and they're talking to you in English. And of course, you can read or hear English. Maybe you see a sign, or you see a poster in English, or you hear English voices in the distance. That's what I'm referring to. Now, a couple questions. Have you ever woken up from a dream and thought, was that English? Was I speaking English? Was I hearing English? And in your dream, did it feel effortless? Were you able to speak English without thinking about it? Were you fluent in English in your dream? Let me know in the comments below. I'm curious. So here's the thing. If you can think in English in your dreams, if you can speak English, if you can listen to English, if English appears in your dreams, that's a very, very good sign, because it means that your brain is internalizing what you've learned in English. It's internalizing vocabulary, grammatical patterns, speech patterns, all that stuff in your brain, and it's regurgitating them in your dreams. Now, before we go on, if you have never dreamt in English, that's not a bad sign. It doesn't mean that you're not fluent in English, or it doesn't mean that your English is not good, but it is something you can actually try to implement and to start doing. So now I'm going to teach you a strategy that's super simple that you can use every single night to try to increase your chances of dreaming in English. And this strategy is super simple. Before you go to bed every single night, you should do something in English. The last thing you do in the day should be done in English. This does not mean that you have to sit down and read a textbook, try to understand a difficult grammatical concept, because that's actually not going to help you sleep. If you're doing something too difficult or something that requires too much mental effort, you're not going to be able to sleep. On the contrary, if you're doing something easier or something more relaxing, for example, watching a show, reading a simple story, listening to English music, something that relaxes you, something that doesn't require too much mental effort, you're going to be using English, you're going to be exposed to English, but at the same time, you're also going to stay relaxed. It's not going to make your mind restless or stressed or anxious, but it's also important not to do something so difficult or so complicated that you're going to have a hard time sleeping. Now, I always recommend doing something before bed in English for a couple reasons. And the first is obviously that it will help you dream in English. If we accept that our dreams are a reflection of our lives, if you do something before bed in English, you increase the likelihood that you will dream in English. It doesn't mean that you will 100% dream in English, but there definitely is an increased likelihood. Now, this is something that I've done anecdotally with German. I spent about 4 or 5 years learning German on my own, and I eventually moved to a German-speaking country and started using German in my daily life. And I knew I was fluent in German the moment I began to dream in German. So obviously doing something in English before bed will help you dream in English. Even if it doesn't, even if you don't end up dreaming that night in English, it's still going to help you remember what you learn. And the reason for this, and there have been studies done on this, is that if you do something before bed, it gives your brain a chance to consolidate what you learned, to let it digest in your memory. So it will also increase the likelihood that you remember what you learn. We have an expression in English, to sleep on something. Normally that's used metaphorically. For example, you can sleep on a big decision, which means you give it some time to sit in your head, to digest before you finally make the decision. So you sleep on a decision, you sleep on something before you finally decide. And by learning vocabulary and by reading a book, listening to a song, watching something relaxing in English before bed, you effectively let your brain sleep on that. And again, you increase the likelihood that you will remember what you learned. So do something in English every single night before you go to bed. It shouldn't be something complicated. It shouldn't be something too difficult or something that requires too much mental focus. You could listen to my videos. You could listen to a podcast. You could do your normal routine. For example, if you like to read in your language, a book in your language, you could also do that in English. Something relaxing, but something in English, which will increase your likelihood of dreaming in English. Now, there's one more thing you can do to increase the chances of dreaming in English, and that is creating something called a dream diary. I've never done this, but I know people who have done this, and this is actually used by people who want to control their dreams. It's something I'm not too familiar with, but when you wake up in the morning and you record your dreams, you're more likely to remember them over time. So every time you have a dream, it could be in English, it could be in any language, when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you should do is write that dream down. What happened? Where was it? Who was in the dream? When it happened? All that stuff. Put it down in your dream diary, and you're more likely to remember that dream and also future dreams as well. Obviously, we don't always remember our dreams. Maybe you've dreamt in English without even knowing it. Maybe you don't even remember the dream. But let me know in the comments if you have ever experienced this, where you've spoken in English in a dream, where you've listened to English in a dream, where you've read, or of course, where you've heard English in the background.